What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into TTP Sports. I have returned from my vacation of basically not doing anything this week, in Vegas and all of that stuff, playing the slots, watching the Flyers lose to the Golden Knights. That was misery. But we are back, and we are here to talk about the Birds because they play their final game of the season, and they won, even though the game didn't matter at all. Week 18, basically, at this point. Just a vibe. It really just is a vibe. And the Eagles are 14-3 to finish the season, and they do know what their playoff matchup is going to be. They will be facing the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round next week. Now, we have no idea what day that's going to be, whether it's a Saturday or a Sunday. Still have to determine the rest of the scheduling and the rest of the seeding, due on some other games that are being played later on. I think the Rams game still has to be decided to where they're seated at. The big game between Minnesota and Detroit later tonight to decide the one seed in the NFC. And there's still a couple of games in the AFC for their seeding purposes that need to be decided. So we most likely will not know anything, I would assume, until later on in the week, midweek, before we get to the weekend. So we know who our opponent's playing, and that's basically what it matters at the end of the day, because the game at face value did not mean anything. It just didn't. It just didn't. So it was one of those games where just put it on in the background, put your feet up. You can focus on it if you want to, or you could focus on something else. That's basically how little this game mattered. But, there were some interesting things that had happened, so we'll go over all of that today. And, looking forward to next week, and we'll talk about next week more throughout this week, the matchup with the Green Bay Packers, so definitely stay tuned for all that stuff. But before we get into the rest of today, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTP Sports. And if you have not hit that subscribe button yet, you have been viewing for a little bit, haven't hit it yet, I definitely recommend that you do. Hit that subscribe button. It does me a great deal of service with the YouTube algorithm. You can also drop a like. You can also leave a comment in the comment section down below. I love to interact with you guys on everything. So you can also use the code TTP Sports, $20 off your first purchase at SEATGEEK. I don't know, in terms of playoff tickets, how much they'll get you $20 off. I don't know how much they're going to cost, but $20 off is $20 off. It's a good deal. Don't pass it up. You can also leave a follow on Instagram and TikTok at TTP Sports for reels and shorts and all that great stuff. So, Eagles beat the Giants 20-13 in a meaningless game, and really the only thing that was really talked about this week in the Philly sports scene, obviously, on sports talk radio and all that stuff, was, are the Eagles going to start Saquon Barkley? That's really the case that was going to be. And I did say that last week, after the Cowboys game, that selfishly I wanted Saquon to play just to break the record and everything there. But I completely understand the Eagles not wanting to play Saquon Barkley because there's a lot of factors that go into that. When you're starting Saquon Barkley, that means most likely you're going to have to start at least a few of the offensive line starters. That means Lane Johnson has to play, Jordan Mailata, Cam Jerkins, Landon Dickerson, all that stuff. You don't want to force those guys to go into a meaningless game against New York and risk injury. The same thing with Saquon. So Saquon plays, those guys play. I'm not sure if anyone else on the offensive perspective would have to start, but that is a lot of risk because the offensive line and Saquon, they basically just fit each other perfectly, and you don't want to risk injury with any of those guys, really, especially Saquon, especially Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, everyone you don't want to risk injury for. And I really, really understand why the Eagles didn't do it. It was just selfish on my perspective, but that was, there were so many people going around like Saquon should play this game. The Eagles should play Saquon. I was never in the case of Saquon has to play. You've been playing for so long. Your bye week was in week 5. That is so much football you have been playing in a row, and you've been playing great football, might I add. But the fact that you had that long of playing time without any time to rest, a lot of guys needed the rest this week. You're looking at guys like, obviously, Saquon Barkley, who has never, experienced, this in his entire playing career at this point, getting that, off week before a playoff matchup. wide receivers, rest A.J. Brown, rest Devontae Smith. Obviously Jalen Hurts is still in concussion protocol. Most likely he'll be reactivated this week when you get back into practices. Defensively, I think Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, they weren't inactive today, but they weren't going to play regardless. Really, the only person that I saw starting-wise on the defense was Jordan Davis, and that definitely did pull up some question marks because I think he was even playing in the third quarter. So either that was just a Vic Fangio decision, that was a Nick Sirianni decision, or that was a Jordan Davis decision on wanting to play that game. I have no idea in the world. But that was basically the weird thing, It's important to, get guys like Quinyon rest because it's their first full season. Same thing with Cooper DeJean. If you're looking at the defensive front, obviously get Jalen Carter a lot. a lot of rest on that front defensive line, especially there as well. Get some guys, Zach Bond, Nakobe Dean, all that stuff. It was very important for a lot of guys to get rest this week, basically the entire team, because, like I said, you've been playing football since week 5. That was your bye week. It was the earliest bye week possible. A lot of these guys needed the rest, and it was very important to get the rest. So this was not a week going into where Saquon Barkley had to play. He had to break the record this week. No, I completely disagree with that sentiment. It was just selfish because I wanted to see him break the record. But I completely understand the decision to not play Saquon. It's probably the right decision at the end of the day because, I don't want to risk injury. And that's, I don't want to risk injury, and I also want these guys to get rest. That's really the most important thing there because the main goal of this team is not breaking a record. It's going out there, having a deep playoff run, getting to the NFC Championship game, getting to the Super Bowl, and possibly even winning a Super Bowl. That is the main goal of this squad going into the playoffs. And a lot of people on sports talk radio were trying to if you lose in the playoffs, at least you had the Saquon record. That's why you should have broke it. Realistically, if you go into the playoffs and say you lose in the first, second round, or even lose in the NFC Championship game on the Super Bowl, no one is looking back on this season and looking at Saquon. At least he broke the record. It's a magical season nonetheless. 2,000 yards, it's still fantastic. Record or not. No one's going to look back on this season if Saquon did break the record, if the Eagles, lose in heartbreaking fashion or just frustrating fashion in the playoffs. No one's going to look back on it because it won't matter at the end of the day because you didn't achieve the ultimate goal. So, it's the right decision. Like I said, selfishly, I would have loved for him to play to break the record, but I completely understand the decision by the Eagles, Nick Sirianni and all that stuff, to rest a lot of guys because it is the right decision at the end of the day. It was just, Jesus Christ, I saw it throughout the week on Twitter, on social, even listening to some of sports talk radio. It was just insane how some people were just so gung-ho on wanting Saquon to play. It was ridiculous. It just, I felt like it was talked a little more than it needed to be. And then people are going to bring up because Mike Evans got his 11th straight 1,000-yard receiving season. People are going to be all up on that because, if they let Mike Evans break the record, why couldn't they let Saquon? One, the Tampa Bay game was more important for Tampa Bay because the division was on the line between them and Atlanta. That game for Tampa was really important. This game meant nothing to the Eagles. If this was a game that meant something, if the division was still on the line or there were seeding positions still involved for the Eagles, like say if they were still en route to get the number 1 seed, then it's more understandable to play your starters. It's more understandable to play Saquon Barkley. But for this meaningless game where nothing, no loss, no win impacts your seeding or anything there, the game was a glorified preseason game. That's what it was. There's no purpose to it. There was no purpose to play any of your starters. Now, you saw Dallas Goedert get a few snaps in there on a couple of drives, just coming off of injury just to get his feet wet and all that stuff. That makes sense for some of those guys that missed a little bit of time. You don't play your main starters that have played, for the past so many weeks. It just doesn't make sense. You don't want to risk that. Because you do see with Green Bay, they played some of their starters. Well, they did play their starters because seeding purposes and all that stuff, because the game mattered to them. They lose a couple of people. They lost Watson and Jordan Love. He had an elbow problem. So that's going to be discussed going into this week. So it just was a risk that the Eagles didn't seem worthy of taking. And I completely understand it at the end of the day. It didn't need to happen. And that's wrap a bow on that. Doesn't matter. Week over. You're focusing on the playoffs now. You're 14-3. Now your mind and goal is set on this playoff run and facing Green Bay for the wild card round. Now, for the game specifically, like I said, it was just a vibe. It just felt like both teams were in complete fuck it, just, constantly going for it on fourth down. It was really just a fuck it game because, like I said, glorified preseason. This game doesn't matter for, well, it kind of matters to the Giants in terms of fans that want them to lose for their draft position. It would have been very funny if the Giants did win and kind of fucked up their draft position at the same time. I was kind of praying for that just because, fuck the Giants. But Tanner McKee looked solid. He looked good, basically, I would say, obviously more playing time than he had against the Dallas Cowboys. But if you look at Tanner McKee's stat line, he went 27-41 with 269 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did take 2 sacks, but overall it was a very solid game there for Tanner McKee. Looking at some of the receivers that did play in this game, Dallas Goedert, he had 6 targets for 4 catches on 55 yards. Jahan Dotson had 94 yards in this game. Anais Smith had 35 yards. This is also like in a situation where it's week 18. Some guys that you never heard of in your entire life are making catches and catching touchdowns. E.J. Jenkins, his first NFL reception is a touchdown. I was like, what the what? Where are these guys even coming from? Anais Smith, his first touchdown in this game as well. Will Shipley got some targets. Johnny Wilson got some targets. Same thing with Calcaterra, Kenny Gainwell, and all that stuff. So it was just one of those crazy things. There were a couple of good throws from Tanner McKee throughout the day. It's good stuff. And I was talking about this deep in my mind as well as the game was going along. Tanner McKee's looking solid. Great, he's playing against the New York Giants, so I think anybody's going to look good at the end of the day. Except who did the Giants play? Was it the Bengals? I think it was the Bengals that they played last week where they crushed them, scored 45-plus points or something like that. I forget at the end of the day because the game doesn't matter regardless. But overall, it was just the fact that Tanner McKee looks solid. I think that's the summary at the end of the day. But like I said, with the way that I was thinking in the back of my mind, Tanner McKee's been looking good. He made a couple of good throws last week against Dallas. He looks solid today, regardless if it against the New York Giants or not. He's had a couple of good preseason snaps, for the Eagles in the past few years. Maybe Howie Roseman could do some magic and work some draft capital back in return for a team that is very desperate for a quarterback in the offseason. Maybe you trade Tanner McKee in the offseason. Maybe. I don't know how a trade like that would work. It would obviously be, getting draft capital back in return for Howie Roseman. I don't know. Who are teams in the NFL that are like desperate need of a quarterback and possibly either fucked up their draft position and they're maybe not en route to get a quarterback in this upcoming draft? Like, maybe looking at teams right there instead of teams that are in like the top positions of the draft. Maybe look at teams that are in the middle positions of the draft that still need a quarterback and maybe don't want to risk taking one in the draft. Call up Howie Roseman and ask about Tanner McKee. I think Howie Roseman will definitely be glad to work business with those teams, maybe getting some draft capital in there. If Howie Roseman found a way to get a first-round pick from a desperate team looking for Tanner McKee, that would be fucking hilarious. That would be hilarious. Even Sean said it right there. That was something I've been seeing on Twitter as well today. Swapping McKee for Myles Garrett. That is hilarious. It's not going to happen. But if Howie Roseman managed to do that, I wouldn't even know what to say. That's just pure Howie magic. Oh, man. It is so stupid to even think about. But the possibility of just, getting draft capital back for Tanner McKee, he's got good tape. He put stuff on tape here. Maybe teams are very interested in that. Oh, man. Oh, man, what a world we live in where we're talking about trading Tanner McKee, even though it most likely could be the case of happening because, obviously, Jalen Hurts is the quarterback of the future for this team and for the foreseeable future. Tanner McKee, he's a third-string quarterback, but, has shown flashes that he can play in the NFL. A team might be desperate enough to do that. Is, Myles Garrett, for Myles Garrett on Cleveland, right? So, it's Cleveland that desperate? Because it does, even though they probably are bringing Deshaun Watson back next year. Oh, man. What did they get when AJ Feely was traded? Kind of the same vibe. Let's look. Let's look that up. AJ Feely. Trade. What did the Eagles get in return for that? For a 2005 draft pick. That's what the trade was for. Let's see. They got a second round pick in the 2005 draft. That's what the Eagles got in that trade. So maybe that's what we're looking at. Maybe that could be the same vibe. Who knows? But you know, Howie Roseman, maybe he can work even more magic to a team that is very desperate. Now, obviously, I doubt you can get Myles Garrett for Tanner McKee. So I don't expect that anything at all. So let's see. There's still some kind of updates on Jordan Love because it was an elbow issue they were talking about in the game against Chicago. I don't think he played the rest of the game, if I'm not mistaken. This is a quote from Jordan Love. This comes from Jonathan Jones from NFL on NBC. So this is a quote from him, Jordan Love. I've pretty much lost all feeling in my hands. Said his hand still feels numb as he stands talking at the press conference, but indicates he believes he'll be fine for next week's game against the Eagles. So that's pretty much what that process is right there. Let's see. And also in terms of everything else with the, Christian Watson, he left the game, got carted off. So we got to, hope on an update for him. Hopefully he is okay. But that definitely is very huge in terms of matchup based for the Eagles because it's one of their top wide receivers, Green Bay. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. It was, non-contact injury too. So definitely something very ugly could have been happening there. Non-contact injuries never end well. So we'll see. We'll see. And that's stuff we'll find out as the week goes along. So we have no idea what the case is there. So I just want to see what the, if there is even any update on Christian Watson. Because let's see. So if I just copy his name, because I can't spell properly, let me put his name here, put it into the Twitterverse, see if there's any updates on Christian Watson. Packers coach Matt LaFleur, this is from Ian Rappaport. Matt LaFleur tells reporters that Jordan Love, right elbow was held out with precaution. He'll be good to go against the Eagles. He's much more unsure about Christian Watson, which is a knee injury. And the way that he was looking on the cart, it probably is bad. It probably is very bad. And I'm looking at the replay. Oh, yeah, that's not good. That is not good. Is there anything updated on that front? Is there anything updated on that front? Doesn't look like it. Let's see. Yeah, it's just no updates, so we won't know anything until midweek, most likely, on anything in terms of injury-related things with the Green Bay Packers. Same thing with the Eagles. We won't find out until, practices midweek when Jalen Hurts starts taking the reps and the snaps and all that. So it's really just waiting to see everything that's happening right now because in terms of other matchups, if you're looking throughout the NFL, so the Rams, I think they're playing right now. They just started their game against Seattle, so that game still has to, in terms of, because right now Tampa Bay, they just won their game. They just wrapped up the NFC South division. They're 10-7, but if anything happens with the Rams game, say if the Rams were to win. The Rams right now are in the 3 seed. They win, they stay in the 3 seed, and they're the team that plays the Washington Commanders. If the Rams lose, Tampa Bay moves up, and Tampa Bay plays the Commanders, and then whoever's in the 4th seed, they play either Minnesota or Detroit, depending on who wins that game later tonight, because those teams still have to play to determine the matchup and, who wins the number 1 seed in the NFC. And that's going to be an insane game. That was one of the best games scheduled here. Like, no one really expected that was going to be the case. Both teams fighting it out for the number 1 seed. But, that's the matchup we got here, and that's definitely going to be an exciting game as we wind down the rest of tonight. That's the Sunday Night Football game. I do believe that is the case. Yeah, that is the Sunday Night Football game. So, definitely going to be a weird one. But, nothing with the Eagles affects anything, so we're just basically waiting on the rest of the seeding and the playoff matchups to go about in terms of what's going to happen for Wild Card Weekend, because obviously the Kansas City Chiefs, they're the only team so far that is confirmed with a bye. We got to wait to see who gets the bye in the NFC. Either it's Minnesota or Detroit, and then we'll see. We'll see. I do think Minnesota ends up winning. I just have that feeling. Detroit's defense, too banged up, just insanely banged up, even though their offense is electric. I think it'll go down to the wire, but I do think Minnesota pulls it out at the end of the day. But still on Minnesota's front, they're still a very good team. I just think longevity term in terms of playoffs, do you trust Sam Darnold to go all the way? I think that's the major question mark that you're asking about Minnesota. Detroit's obvious, the injuries. The injuries on the defense are going to kill them in the playoffs if they do go far, or if they don't. Defense will come back to haunt them. Their offense is legit, but their defense, obviously, that's the biggest question mark. Eagles, I think it's just basically, can they keep up some offensive consistency? Because obviously the run game is electric, the defense is electric. It's really just, can the passing game find consistency in the playoffs? And I do think it will at the end of the day. So, like I said, these are discussions as we go throughout the entire week. Because right now, all we know is the matchup with Green Bay. We don't know the time. We don't know any of the other matchups. We don't know the other bye week for the NFC. There's still a lot of things to go for. Gotta wait, boys. Gotta wait. Sean has the Vikings winning 37-34. Yeah, I think it'll be close. I think it'll be close. It was funny, too, because when you were throughout the entire Eagles game, you're just looking at the other scores, like, specifically Washington and what was the other game? The Green Bay game, obviously. The Bears were winning for a little bit at the beginning, then the Packers came back. Then the Bears went on a field goal at the end of the game. Washington was losing for a little bit because, Jaden Daniels wasn't looking good at being in the game. Then, Marcus Mariota comes into the game, and that's what helps Washington win. A big missed coverage on a fourth down at the end of the game by Dallas allowed Mariota to get so much huge yardage to get into the red zone. And then where it looked like Washington was screwing themselves up with the play clock, letting it grind down so much, just a great catch by Terry McLaurin in the end zone to win it, to clinch the 6th seed for Washington. So it was just a weird day. It was a crazy day. Like I said, Week 18, when your game does not matter, is just a complete vibe. Like I said, I just, usually I watch the game right here on my monitor when, obviously the game matters. The game didn't matter. I threw it up on the TV in the background, and I focused on some other stuff in terms of, tweaking stuff, editing stuff that I missed during the week. Because, like I said, I'm also doing the editing for Rush Joy now, so I'm, tweaking all of that stuff. So the game was on in the background. I just looked up and, in terms of stuff and just laughed because that's how little the game mattered to me at the end of the day. Complete vibe. That's what it was. And I don't think there's any other thing in terms of Eagles Twitter from this game, obviously. Nick Sirianni. Jeffrey Lurie today was his 300th career win as the owner of the Eagles, so that's actually very nice to see. What else is there? Jordan Love will play against the Eagles next weekend. Most likely that is the case. Obviously, the Christian Watson stuff is up in the air. We don't know what's going on with him. What else? Don't see anything else here in terms of the game. Do not see anything else. Don't at all. Nick Sirianni confirms that Jalen Hurts was at the Eagles walkthrough on Saturday, says Hurts is progressing through the concussion protocol. Not shocked whatsoever. That was obviously going to be the case. A lot of people were definitely getting concerned. We're getting concerned about everything with Jalen Hurts not showing up at practices this week, but that was always going to be the case at the end of the day. Really, the only time you would get concerned in terms of Jalen Hurts and the concussion protocol is if it goes into next week, if he misses a practice or two next week, or this week, actually. So there was nothing to be concerned about that case. It's really just what's going to happen this week. He's obviously going to be returning to practice, so that's the most important thing at the end of the day. Tanner McKee, trade block, get a couple of draft picks in return, maybe one or two. Obviously, I think the bigger joke is the Myles Garrett one, but who knows? Maybe, who knows? Cleveland's dumb. Cleveland's a terrible ran team. I wouldn't be shocked. I would be shocked, but I wouldn't be shocked because that's how poorly they're ran. And Howie Roseman can maybe work some magic. Who knows? Because I do remember seeing like the Eagles are the favorite in the offseason in terms of betting wise to land Myles Garrett. So we'll see how everything goes there. But good way to start the week. Good way to start the week. I was in Vegas from New Year's Day till, came back yesterday afternoon. Like I said, I was at the game in Vegas for the Flyers, and that was miserable. Even though the Flyers scored like 15 seconds into the game, I was like, oh, this might be a good night. Nope. Nope. That sucked. But I guess the hockey gods rewarded my misery for having good luck on the slots. Because after the Flyers lost, I had pretty good luck on the slots the next 2 nights. Oh, man. The slots were really good the next 2 nights for me, obviously. So, hey, win some money, take it back home to the bank. That's all that matters at the end of the day. All I was caring about was, could I leave Vegas with more money than I brought? And I think that did end up being the case. I think it did. I lost count at the end of the day. I did lose count, but I do think I brought, even though I didn't bring that much money. But I think I earned more money than I lost. Oh, man. What a week. What a week. Flying is, I know I'm going off on a complete side thing here, but like I said, there's really nothing else in terms of game-wise to talk about because most of the stuff that's going to be more focused on and looking into next week, we're going to be talking about that throughout the week until, we hear some news things, anything that has to be injury updated related or anything like that. When it comes to the Eagles, when it comes to Green Bay, in terms of times of the matchup and all that stuff, we won't find that out until later tonight or later in the week. So right now, it's just talking through my ass. But like I said, going back to traveling, fucking exhausting. It was. We had to wake up at 2 a.m. Vegas time for Saturday to get to a 6 a.m. flight. So, because you always want to be at the airport like 2.5 hours early before your flight. So, I was exhausted last night. Plus, it was like a 4.5 to 5 hour flight back home. It was a 5+ hour flight to Vegas. I slept like 12 hours last night into the night. It was annoying. It was annoying. But before we get to, Sean, I see you in the comment section here. I think there were other guys in the comment section before. Yeah, I see Sir. Hey, Sir Philly. I did see Tyler in here, but I think he deleted a comment. I think it was Tyler because he thought we were playing Washington. Then I think he deleted that comment. So let's get to the anytime hotline here. Let's get to the voicemail. Sean left the voicemail. Let's hear his voice before we read his texts on the chat here. Let's see what Sean has to say.
Well, for a glorified exhibition game, it was okay. I mean, like they said at the end, the main thing is that there was no injuries. I thought Tanner McKee, for the most part, played well. I thought he hit a lull in the third quarter, but he moved the ball, put them in, scoring drives most of the game, made good decisions for the most part. I'm guessing that Shipley may have got dinged up again because I thought it was a little weird that Gainwell came in at the end. But again, you got through it unscathed, and now you get ready for whoever's next. I mean, bring them on. I mean, I don't think being the 2 seed is a bad thing right now. You haven't really had to travel. You've got at least 1, possibly 2 more home games if you win next week. I mean, let Detroit and Minnesota beat the snot out of each other tonight. I hope that game's down to the wire, goes to overtime. I mean, take every advantage you can get. But a solid job by McKee and the backups. I mean, the Giants losing again, blowing, even a higher pick for them, atypical Giants. But, got the job done and stayed healthy. That's the most important thing.
Oh, yeah, that definitely is the most important thing at the end of the day. I want to see where the Giants' draft position is after this. So, are they the worst team now in the NFL? It looks like they do have the worst record. It looks like they do have the worst record after today. Yeah, it does look like it. They do. They have the first pick. Tennessee has the second pick. Cleveland has the third. I think that's the way it works. unless there's a draft lottery. I don't think there's a draft lottery in the NFL. So, are the Giants locked into the first overall pick? I have no fucking clue. I have no fucking clue. Yeah. Overall, the game was basically just like I said, you just sit down, put your feet up. That's all that matters. And the Giants would have won. It would have hurt. Yeah. So I think the Giants are locked into the first overall pick now. From the way that it is looking on ESPN standings, because New England won, Jacksonville lost, but it says they're 4-13. The Raiders, I don't think they play until later on, and obviously they can't get the first overall pick. So I think the Giants are locked into that, if I am not mistaken. So, yeah, I think that is the case. But, yeah. Well, so yeah, it looks like someone from Denver just got hurt. I can't tell who that is. Hopefully that's not bad. Denver is fighting for their playoff lives today. I think that's the case, if I'm not mistaken. So if I look at the playoffs for the AFC, yeah, Denver, I think, needs to win today. Yeah, Denver needs to win today. So, yeah. I think that's what matters now. Sanders to Neighbors. Oh, yeah, the one thing that I was going to mention, too, when Neighbors got his touchdown in this game, it was fucking trashed. What was it, in the third, fourth quarter when the Giants tried to make it a game or something like that? I forget. I think they made it 10-7 or something. I forget. But, or they tied it at 10. I completely forget. But, because that's how meaningless the game was. Dude was trash talking to Eagles fans. Dude, you scored a touchdown. What was it, McCollum in coverage or something like that? You beat McCollum. Dude sucks. And you're sitting here. It was a nice play for you to stay in bounds to get your touchdown. You're sitting here trash talking Eagles fans when you're 3-14. What are you doing? Oh man, it's weird. It is crazy. It is crazy. But yep, it's basically all that we got for today here. I don't see anything else in terms of because this game really didn't matter. We won't find anything out until later in the week. So get to you guys here in the comments, live chat here before we end it off, and I go to do some editing. Sir Philly, how you doing? What's up? Now we can focus on taking on a beat-up Green Bay team. Definitely glad they sat Barkley and everybody else. Oh, yeah. They let me out of Vegas, Sean. I did not get arrested. Would I have gotten arrested after the Flyers game? No, I kept myself behaved. I kept myself behaved. Let's see. I think the they'll get the Sunday night game. The Eagles. I think they'll get the Sunday 8:00 game on NBC. I think that's what they'll want to do. Because I feel like out of all the games that'll go on in the playoffs in the first round in the wild card matchup, I think the Eagles and Green Bay will be the best matchup in terms of viewership. I think the Sunday night game is where they're at. They could also be 4:30, especially getting Fox there, Tom Brady. Maybe that could be the case too. It's either it could be 4:30 or it's 8:00. It's one of those two times. They're definitely not giving them a 1:00 playoff game. I don't see that happening whatsoever. What else? You're going with the Flyers with an upset tonight? Or World Juniors Finland with the upset and Flyers feeling a 3-2 loss. We'll see. Fedotov's a net tonight, so hasn't played in over a month. What is it, the fact there? He's either shutting out Toronto or he's getting smoked. I think it's one of those two options. Nothing in between. He's either shutting them out or getting smoked. World Juniors. I haven't watched the World Juniors. I know Canada got eliminated. That was funny. USA, I think, they're on to the gold medal game, I'm assuming. So, yeah. I'll definitely watch the gold medal matchup when that happens. What else? Black Monday tomorrow. Dougie P is getting fired. Oh, yeah, I think Doug Peterson's getting fired. 100%. 100%. I think that's it. Fedotov and net never a dull moment. I agree. Kolosov looked terrible in Vegas, honestly. The Flyers' goaltending situation is just terrible in general. Erson's constantly getting injured. His numbers aren't good. Kolosov, he needs to be in the AHL. He is not ready for NHL action. He's just given up so many soft goals. Everything there. And Fedotov, you just can't ride three goaltenders, but at this point they're forced to because Erson can't stay healthy. That's the problem. It's the problem there. Maybe they should have got Keaton and Primo off waivers so they could force Kolosov down to the AHL. I don't know how Danny Brière's getting hot tagged by keeping him up. It's kind of stupid. Yeah, if Elias Pettersson is in trade talks, the Flyers better fucking try to trade for him. They better fucking try to. Because that is the center they need to play with Matvei Michkov. I would love that. But before we get into another ramble moment, I think it's time the good place to end it here. Before we talk about anything else. So, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. As always, we'll get back to the consistency this week. Obviously, because I was on vacation for the holiday. So we'll get back into that. Talk some Eagles this week. Maybe we got some room to talk about Flyers. Whatever happens. Knowing my luck, I want to talk Eagles or Flyers this week. The Phillies will do something stupid. Or they'll try to make a move. I have no idea. But whatever happens this week, you'll see a video on it. You'll see a stream maybe. So definitely just look out throughout the week for stuff here. Stay tuned for everything there. So appreciate you guys for tuning in today. Don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Don't forget to drop a like. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It does me a great deal of service. And also use the code TTPSPORTS, $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. Great deal. Do not pass it up. Appreciate you guys for tuning in today. Go Birds. We'll talk a lot more about the playoff matchup next week. And I'll see you then.